my loves. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are, whatever time it may be for you. Listen, here we are with the other part 2 episode. We're supposed to do this on Saturday, but you know what? It's okay. The one thing about just going with the flow is that things will get done timely in the manner in which it is meant to get done. So for all I know, doing this episode, The Art of Discernment, on Monday might have been the right time and place to be able to do it. Don't mind the background noise. It's currently thundering and raining right now where I am, which, honestly, it doesn't matter if it's rain or shine. Everything still goes on. Plus, not only that, I personally feel that, the thunder and the lightning, the rain, adds a little good ambiance to everything. So if you end up hearing it in the background of this episode, don't worry about it. But anyway, today's podcast, Coffee at the Crossroads, is brought to you by water. Did you drink your water today? Don't forget to drink your water. Stay hydrated, y'all. I know a good lot of y'all don't drink enough water. And if you do, hey, God bless, keep it up. If you don't, baby, water is life. Water is nourishment. Water is blessing. Drink your water. All right. Moving right on into these. The art of discernment. Okay? Because in a way, you could say that people be throwing around the word discernment a lot, not fully understanding what it entails. Some people chalk it up to, it's just intuition. When discernment is not just intuition. Is intuition part of discernment? Yes. But it's not solely 100% intuition alone. So what is discernment really? Well, if you go by the textbook definitions of discernment, it reads, the ability to judge well. Long story short, in my opinion, that sounds like common sense. But the problem is with today's society is that common sense ain't common no more. So, let's look at the religious context, which is in the dictionary, mind you. It reads, the perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding. I'll read that for y'all again. The perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding. Therefore, discernment is an emotional, mental, and spiritual intelligence and discipline within oneself to be able to ascertain information in what is going on in a situation or in patterns or events leading up to said situations and beyond it. So intuition does play into discernment, but it's not solely discernment. The ability to take a step back and observe and or reflect on the patterns and movement of spirit in a situation, past situations, and potential situations to come. Now, because discernment is this emotional, mental, and spiritual intelligence, some people will say, you have to contend with your ego. No, baby. When it comes to discernment, you don't have to contend with your ego, okay? Again, it is the absence of judgment, the absence of bias. All you're simply doing is just taking a moment and moving your ego to the side. Your ego, believe it or not, does have a place in everyday living. It really do. But you're putting your biases aside. You're taking a moment to just simply breathe and simply look at things for the reality of what it is. Not for what you want it to be. You're looking at the reality of what it is. So if it happens to be a harsh reality, it's a harsh reality. If it's a gentle reality, then it's a gentle reality. But at the end of the day, this observation is grounded in the concreteness of what it is in truth, not delusion. Delulu is not the Solulu here. All right? But when it comes to this, many people deal with their own biases. They try to put an expectation on spirit itself. They have a confirmational bias, so to speak, that subconsciously they so badly want an outcome to be a certain outcome, it can end up muddying the waters in communion with spirit to be able to understand truly and fully what is going on. And then that's where you get people who come not only to me as clients, but also to other spiritual practitioners, readers, diviners, with issues of they're struggling to hear their spirits, they're struggling to hear their ancestors, they're struggling to hear spirit itself, they're struggling to listen, they're struggling to understand. It's because those people, they're still in the process of learning how to be able to step outside of their biases to truly to be able to understand. And that is okay. Again, it's part of the process in learning and developing in your spirituality. It truly is. It's part of the process. Don't beat yourself up for it. Understand, mistakes do happen. Not being able to fully concretely hear sometimes do happen. It even happens to the best of us sometimes because, listen, we're human. Knowing when to step outside yourself and allow yourself to be okay to go and get help and have an outside perspective that has no hands, thought, or emotions invested in said situation or situations, to be able to fully concretely hear and ascertain the guidance in which you need is acceptable and is 100% okay. Therefore, how does one develop their discernment better? Outside of what we already know, because again, discernment is an emotional, mental, spiritual intelligence and discipline. Aside from going through your healing journey in itself, aside from rewiring and unlearning patterns that trigger you, and that is self-destructive in nature, that brings you out of alignment with your spirits and spirit itself, how do you develop discernment? One of the things that helps you to develop discernment, believe it or not, some people might roll their eyes to it, but in all honesty, life experiences. Letting life teach you. Some people be like, well, yes, of course, life experiences, let it teach you. But truly take a step back. And the situations, everything that has happened to you, ask yourself, have you truly taken a step back and observed and reflected on every single thing? In some of those situations that is hard for you to grow past, heal from, develop past, have you truly sat down and reflected on the potential lesson that might have been in there, regardless if you had a hand to play in it or not? Regardless. And then from there, ask yourself, are you truly allowing yourself to be guided and led by your spirits, by spirit itself, and by your ancestors? Because you'd be surprised how many people out there say that they want guidance. They want to develop a better relationship with spirit and their ancestors and their spiritual court, but yet they're not willing to allow themselves to be guided and led. And one thing that I say to my clients sometimes, and I say it harshly in order to wake them up, if you truly knew what is best, you would not be seeking out for guidance and understanding with your spirits, your ancestors, or spirit itself. Because you being oblivious to your spirit, and your ancestors, you will be, quote unquote, what some people like to say, walking the right path. You wouldn't be needing to ask questions from spirit if you truly knew what was best. Now, me saying that is not to shame anyone, no. Shoot, I'm a spiritual practitioner. I go to council and ask spirit, my ancestors, my spiritual court, for things. To get an insight. To help me learn and grow. Shoot, even other practitioners, we're no better. We're spiritual practitioners for a reason. Because our lives absent of spirit or any of this, honey, it would not be pretty. So are you willing to let go of the steering wheel? Are you willing to give full surrender to your spirits? To be guided and led for your development, betterment, and growth? That's step one. The other way to develop better discernment, and some people don't like the word prayer, but I'm going to keep saying it. Prayer. If you don't like the word prayer, affirmation, mantra. It doesn't matter what words you use. Prayer. Develop it through prayer, developing a deeper relationship with your ancestors, your spiritual court, and spirit itself. The consistency of your prayers, the consistency of your veneration, the consistency of your worship of your higher powers and divinities. Consistency. It's not a one and done, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. No. Consistency, my dears. The consistency of your prayers and your veneration and your dedication to your practice, to the powers in which you work with and or worship and honor, is what will help you to develop a deeper relationship, to have better discernment. And again, that goes back into allowing yourself to be guided and led and instructed in the wisdom and the clarity and the understanding in which you're trying to develop and seek. Learning to be objective of your thoughts and feelings is another way, without bias or invalidating them as well. Because yes, you're human. You are going to have emotions and thoughts about particular situations and things that happen and things that may come. But it's learning to be objective. Asking yourself, why is it that you feel this way? What is causing you to think and feel this way? Learning to observe the observer. Yes, you will feel what you feel. Yes, give space and validity for what you feel. But when it comes to discernment, it's not allowing those thoughts and emotions to infringe upon the movement and the clarity and the wisdom of spirit in said situation that you are in, or might be in, or what's to come, especially when it comes to advising others. In ways you could say is having an equal portions of empathy, sympathy, and apathy all at once. Being connected just enough, but at the same time, I'm not going to say disconnected, because disconnected is not the word. I'm not going to say distance, because distant is not the word. Because the word is objective. Being connected just enough, but objective just as much. To be able to observe yourself. Observe the flow. It is through discernment you're able to observe and monitor the flow of things. How things interconnect and also interdependent on each other. So you can understand properly how to move with spirit and not trying to choke or limit spirit in your hands, in your life. Now, do understand when it comes to discernment, honey, it's not an instantaneous thing. It does take time. It takes consistency. It takes development. It takes having to face some ugly truths about some things that you honestly don't want to. And depending on who you are developing this, oh yeah, it could be a fight, but it doesn't have to be. Some people naturally have discernment. They just naturally know. But that's because they have an innate spirituality, an innate understanding. But just because you have an innate ability and gift to understand, discern, and move with spirit does not neglect that you still have to sit down, learn, study, and hone it. Because let me tell you something, those who sit down and put in the hard work to be able to hone something will naturally, over time, be greater and more talented than someone who has an innate gift. Just because you have a knack for discernment does not mean you mastered it. All right? Other things that you could do to be able to hone and better your discernment. Outside of everything that we just named, of course, I'm going to state nature. Nature itself is one of the best teachers when it comes to discernment. Now, some people would say that these are different forms of meditation and meditative practices. Which, true, yes, it could be considered different forms of meditative practices. But nature, observe nature, understand nature. Educate yourself on nature and how nature operates within its own self, and understanding that you are part of the system of nature just as much. Going back to the whole understanding that everything is connected and interconnected and interdependent on one another. Recognizing that everything has a spirit and is living. Through that understanding, you then can understand the movement and the flow of things. Again, going back to my first podcast, coming back to doing Coffee at the Crossroads. Understanding the root of all things. Discernment. Now, would some say that discernment is a spiritual gift? Of course, some people will say that, but discernment is an art that anyone could develop, because anyone could develop spiritual gifts. Just depends on if you're willing to open that door and keep them open, and to go through your own journey with it. Some people will call understanding the art of discernment is shadow work. But honey, let me break it down for you. Is shadow work important? Yes, but shadow work is just another way of saying taking accountability and responsibility of the things in which you've been through, and taking responsibility and accountability for your traumas, and learning compassion towards yourself in the process. With that said, I know this episode was brief, but with that said, I hope you have a much more below the surface understanding of what discernment is. That way you can sit down and reflect on it. But the one thing I want y'all to do, if you do journal prompt. Are you willing to allow yourself to be guided, instructed, and led? Truly. And what are some obstacles that you think might be keeping you from truly being guided, instructed, and led? Not just by spirit and ancestors, but also by others that you may see and perceive to be mentors or your own mentor. So with that said, God bless. I hope y'all have a fabulous day. And thank you for joining me on this episode. Y'all take care.